Hello, everybody, and welcome to NASMARB Garage Pass. As we ramp up towards the beginning of the second season of NASMARB, we are here to take you through all the twists and turns of the season. And here today, we are going to preview Season 2 of NASMARB for you. I'm here with Luke and Sham, our in-house NASMARB analysts.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome to be here. Great to join the Garage Pass.
On this first show, we are going to just preview the beginning of the season, talk a little bit about the Spiral 360, as well as going through the updated roster after our silly season moves heading into Season 1. And then we'll talk about some of our race picks and our ones to watch throughout the season. So we are going to jump right into our roster for Season 2, as there were quite a few changes through free agency for Season 2. Starting off with the number 1 of Sal. Sal was previously in the number 2 car, and he made the playoffs in that car. He is now part of Fortune Racing with his teammate in the number 7, Confetti. So 2 playoff drivers combining and creating a now 2-car new team, rookie team this season. It'll be interesting to see how they perform. We follow that up with the number 3 of Lemon Drizel. Everyone knows about Drizel. He is a part of Red Pandas Racing, which has now become the largest team in the sport as they have added a 4th car. They have the 33 of Earl, the 43 of Woodpecker, and now the 53 Piper. This team has been a force to be reckoned with so far. They have 2 wins this season, which is one of only 2 teams to have multiple wins in NASMARB coming into the second season.
And yeah, I just wanted to quickly, touch upon Lemon Drizel. I feel like he is the star leader of this team, one of the powerhouse teams of this series. I believe Lemon Drizel is probably someone that I'm going to be looking out for. I think he has, untapped potential to probably be one of the greatest drivers of this series. I do think that he has a chance of possibly being an early championship threat based on his performance from last season. So I would be very interested to see if he can follow up his first season with a step up into the right direction to possibly have a chance at winning the crown.
I absolutely agree with that. Lamont Giselle, I feel, is one of the fan favorites, at least in the top 3 of favorite drivers. There's just so much great with him in his first season. I feel he is yeah, definitely of the Red Panda Racing, he is the lead member, and I'm very excited to see what he does in season 2.
Yeah, I think Red Pandas Racing is a clear top team in the sport, especially now with a 4th car. Like I said, they won 2 races last year, and with Lemon Drizel at the helm of this team, really anchoring the team, I think they are definitely one of the strongest teams and definitely one to keep an eye on going forward into Season 2. Following Red Pandas Racing, we have another one of the biggest teams in the sport, which used to be called Bladestar Motorsports. It is the same roster as that team, the number 4 of Murakami, the number 13 of Winx, and the number 86 of Bloodstorm, but they are now renamed as Misfortune Racing, and quite obviously have a technical alliance with Fortune Racing of Sal and Confetti. Those 3 drivers combined all made the playoffs last year, along with 1 win last season, which was Murakami, so they could also be a team to look out for. Following that team is the number 9 of Quillo with Marvel Sports Worldwide. He's in the same place as he was last year, looking to make his first playoff appearance, as is Neptune in the 11 with the 5-cent vehicles. The same goes for Jack Tato, as he is with Unified Racing in the number 12. He has stayed put this season as well. Our next move on the list is the number 17. If you remember last year, Confetti was in the 17 and actually took out the driver that is taking over for him. Prime in the 17 car won the Spiral 360 last year to get into the playoffs as the number 5 seed. He was then taken out in those playoffs by Confetti at Mayhem Super Speedway, but he was called upon to replace Confetti in that car. The number 25 of Spitzer is the next on the list, sticking with WAF Motorsports. Streamer, who won 3 races last year and is the only driver in the sport with multiple career wins, is still in the 26, along with his teammate Electro, who also had a win last year. OB Racing, obviously a very strong team, with 4 of the 8 regular season wins last season. And then we have our final big move, which would be Steve in the 32 for Titan Motorsports. Steve missed the playoffs entirely last year, had a pretty rough season, but had some shining moments throughout the year, a couple of top 6s for him. We also have the 48 and the reigning champion of Oak with FFA Racing. He has stayed put And our final team on the list is another rookie 2-car team, the number 66 and the 99. The 66 is Mozilla. He was in that same number last year with a different team. He now is the head of Coos Motorsports. And his teammate will be the number 99 of Nugget, who ran in the 16 last year and also missed the playoffs. So that is your rundown of the silly season changes and our entry list for Season 2 of NASMARB. So now that we know the drivers, let's get into some drivers who you guys want to keep an eye on as the NASMARB analysts. Luke, who is your first driver that you would like to keep an eye on?
Well, I did mention this earlier, how Le Mans Drizel is probably something that I was going to be watching out for, possibly becoming an early championship threat. I believe, like I said, with him being the number one driver for Red Pandas Racing, I think he's going to take a step up to possibly, take that team to a championship level competing team with Earl, Woodpecker, and Piper. But actually, I want to just touch upon one quick thing regarding Red Pandas Racing. While I do believe that they will be a force to be reckoned with, Piper is someone that I will be keeping an eye on, but for a different reason. Now, if we remember from last season, Woodpecker had started off the season not that great, and the team owner decided to switch resources to help Woodpecker get into the playoffs. Now, while that's all well and good, sharing resources to help your teammates, what I do believe is that adding a fourth entry to this team might not be the greatest move that you could possibly make, as you want to focus on your current lineup first, just to make sure they can perform consistently week in and week out at these races, and just rushing up a new talent and a rookie here, I don't think is gonna come off as a great success, but only time will tell. I can be proven wrong, but Piper is just something that, or someone that I believe that I'm gonna have to take a closer look on when this new season gets underway.
I do also think it's worth noting, you mentioned it, the sharing of resources between teams that we saw last year. We saw it happen 3 different times, and actually successfully every single time for the teams that use that strategy. This year, that has been disallowed by the NASMARB officials, and so you won't have that resource sharing. So that may even that strengthening of your team that you can use, that you could use in season 1, is now no longer a resource in season 2. So that's also something to keep an eye on. Sham, who is your first driver?
Speaking about that, I would like to bring up Murakami because, as you know, he was able to take the resources from Winx near the end of the season in race 7, and in that, taking through race 7 and 8, he performed way better than he did throughout the entire regular season. But now, since that is gone, I'm very interested to see if he will keep up the levels that he had in the playoffs because they were very impressive in the playoffs, but the rest of his regular season wasn't so great. So I'm very interested to see if he can, coming off of that very intense playoff heat, can come into season 2 with the same level of skill, but just throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I think season 2 is going to be very telling and will show us how maybe start to form a real opinion about these drivers, because season 1, this was a brand new sport, and now we head into season 2 and you are wondering, how is this guy going to perform, as somebody like Murakami just kind of came out of nowhere and was really good at the end of the year. Is he going to be able to keep that up? Same thing for a driver like Woodpecker. So that will definitely be interesting to watch that.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned Murakami. Yeah, Murakami, I think, using that benefit to allow to use Winx's resources to help him get himself into the playoffs. Murakami, I feel like he's definitely someone that I believe is one of the more inconsistent drivers in a sense, because he needed that aid to help him get himself into the playoffs. And without the use of sharing resources, I think this is going to probably, hinder Murakami this season. But I do believe that after what we saw from him in the playoffs, there might be some untapped potential in Murakami that we've yet to see. But, again, only time will tell.
Yeah, I definitely believe that Murakami was so strong in the playoffs, even though he might have had a bit of help getting there. I think it was such a strong showing in race 7, 8, and the entirety of the playoffs that I full heartedly believe that now he's gotten his motivation, and starting off in season 2, I firmly believe that he should be a force to be reckoned with if he can keep up the same level of threat level that he had at the end of season 1.
If you want my honest opinion, I think Woodpecker is going to be the one who will prove to everybody that even though he was one of the ones who didn't get off to a great start last season, I think he's going to be the one that will show the world what he's made of.
Another team that I'm looking interested in is the team of Fortune Racing. I think Sal and Confetti both were kind of iffy throughout the entirety of season 1. Both were at points a bit under the cut line, being in danger of not even getting into the playoffs. But then near the end of the season, they came out of somewhere. Just they came out with all of the speed, and Sal and Confetti just blitzed into the front and even passed the three winners of uh, Electro, Murakami, and Prime in playoff points. Even though they had a win and they did not, they were still able to just come out at the ending and just do very well. So I'm very interested to see if the racing team name will actually show what they are all about, and it was not just a fluke. They just are quite fortunate.
Funny enough that you do mention that, while watching over last season, Sal and Confetti did have an uptick in performance in once the playoffs started. It was very unfortunate that neither driver could advance past, I believe, was it the first round, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Confetti actually did advance. They beat Prime in the first round, but Murakami beat Sal in the first round to knock him out very early.
Okay. But yes, I do believe that the momentum that they had ending last season is going to carry over to this beginning of the season. Yeah, so one more person I'm going to be watching out for. This might come as a pretty big shock, but I'm going to be watching it at Steve this season. Reason being, I was looking over, during the testing session that these cars turned over, and I noticed that Steve was one of the more faster cars out there, posting some really consistent lap times. After the disappointing season that they had, last season, Titan Motorsports, I believe, with this new rebrand, this new look, and this new maturity level that I'm seeing from Steve growing into this next season, I think Steve is someone that who's gonna shock the world. Like he left a lot of fans just, wondering last season what really is he capable of, and I think he's gonna showcase that.
It's unfortunate that the Maobao team was not able to come back because personally I think that was one of the best designed cars out on the field. But I'm very interested in Luke picking that because when we were going through season 1, he was not a fan of Steve whatsoever. So I'm very interested to see if his driving style or performance will be a lot better in this new Titan Motorsports company. And then for my last pick of upcoming drivers, I think I might be putting all my eggs in this one basket, and that will be Neptune of Defiant Vehicles. For some reason, I feel like this will be his season. It was really unfortunate hit for him in the first season because in the first 4 races, he was actually all the way up in 6th place in playoff points. But as you know, in the final race, he ended up in 19th, which is quite poor, even missing 2 of those races of the last 4. And I feel like he's learned from that, and I think he'll be one I'm very much watching in this season 2 to see how well he does.
Yeah, you talk about a lot of these drivers who started off with so much uh, poise going into the first couple races, and then since then they fell off, much like Neptune, much like Willow. Um, yeah, I think
Spitzer
yeah,
even.
Spitzer as well. Yeah, Neptune. I will say that is a little bit of an interesting pick. There was nothing really much I personally saw from Neptune, but with this series, anything is possible, and with no type of advantage or disadvantage really to any of these drivers. Yeah, again, time will only tell if Neptune can really, prove himself that he is capable of competing with some of these top tier teams like, the Red Pandas Racings, like the OB Racings.
I just think he'll be one of the upcoming new drivers that'll blitz out in the front, maybe even get an early win. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that one thing that's interesting to note about Neptune is their qualifying prowess that they had in season one, and that's actually something that goes for Sal as well. Even though Sal made the playoffs and was running decently well at the end of the season, Neptune was really good at qualifying last year. And once it got to the race, the first few races were fine, and then he really just fell off. And like you said, ended up missing 2 races, so the qualifying and the racing fell off for him. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can pick that up going into season two. Now, speaking of the kind of up and down drivers, like we were talking about with Neptune, I was surprised that none of you chose to talk about Prime. Prime, to me, was a very interesting driver last year, winning the first race of the season. He won that from the number 2 seed, and then he ended up going on to qualify in the top 2 again the next race before just completely falling off the map for basically the next 6 races up until the final race of the season, where he very nearly won his second race of the year, as he almost wasn't in the top 12 in actual points and got in on just the win that locked him in. So I'm interested to see what he can do in the 17 car that made the playoffs last year that actually took him out of the playoffs. I'm interested to see if Prime can really show what he's made of and get back to what he was at the very beginning of season one.
I think for Prime, consistency will be key. Prime definitely strikes me as someone who can be a consistent driver. Maybe not race winning, but I could totally see him pointing his way into the playoffs without a doubt.
So, speaking of the former winner of the Spiral 360, it is time to hear your race picks. So, each of you are going to have 2 race picks, somebody you think is a favorite going into this race that you think will pull it off, and then we will go for an underdog pick, somebody to keep an eye on that they maybe wouldn't have if they didn't listen to the show. Luke, who you got as your favorite winning the Spiral 360?
Well, he won this race, very recently, so I believe he's, gonna showcase some of the speed again. I believe Electro from OB Racing is gonna back up his most recent win at Spiral and open up the new season with a win for OB Racing. Now, thing to note is that I believe Electro did also win from the pole here. He was by far probably the fastest car that race weekend, and I believe that they're going to carry that momentum to this new season to open up OB Racing with a win. Electro, I believe definitely, the number 2 driver at OB Racing, with obviously Streamer, dominating throughout the regular season. But I believe Electro is someone that no one really pays much attention to on the track. I think he has a lot of speed in that number 93, and I think he's going to take a step up to possibly compete with his teammate for who's going to be the number 1 driver between OB Racing.
Yeah, and Electro certainly has a lot of momentum going into this race as well. You mentioned he won the last race we had here at Spiral in race 7 of last season, the Vortex 720, and he also is coming off of a top 3 championship finish in which he beat his teammate Streamer. So that's an interesting pick there for sure. Sham, how about you?
Going off of what Hershey said, I think my pick will be for Neptune. As Hershey said, his qualifying times are very good. At both of his spirals, he was placed third and fifth. And while neither he did very well performance wise, I feel like that this will be his year, and I believe that he will be able to start capitalizing on these very good qualifying times, actually doing it in the races against his opponent racers.
Fascinating. I'm not sure that that fits in the favorites category, but we'll give it to you. Luke, who's your underdog winner?
Now, I know there's quite a few people here on this list that I believe have a really great chance of winning any one of these races. And if I'm gonna give someone from back in the pack as a dark horse pick, I'm gonna go with Earl. Earl, I believe, is one of the more consistent drivers, one of the more consistent non-winning drivers, I must say. He did he did have a spot in the playoffs for most of the regular season last season until the final couple or so races where he just barely fell out of it. And during the playoffs, he was doing very well, but I think Earl from Red Pandas Racing is someone that I want to watch out for. I think if there's any one of those Red Pandas Racing drivers who haven't won yet, which would be Earl and of course, Piper, but I believe Earl is probably going to take a step ahead and possibly, out or edge out Woodpecker to cement himself as at least the second best driver from that team. And hey, maybe if the stars align, he could probably have something to say for Le Mans Drizel. So I'm going to go with Earl for my dark horse pick.
Well, he certainly has a lot riding on this season. As the only driver at Red Pandas Racing last year to miss the playoffs, he was the only driver at Red Pandas Racing last year that didn't win a race. So this would be a big race for him to win, certainly. Sham, who is your underdog pick?
Yeah, my underdog pick will be going to Winks. Both times they kind of did somewhat average in both Spiral's 360 races, but I feel like they are one of the bigger picks of the misfortune racing. While Murakami and Bloodstorm might have done better in wins and points than Winks, I feel Winks is still might be their lead runner of the team. And I feel he will have a great race here at this first race of Season 2 at Spiral.
Awesome. Well, those are some interesting picks for sure, guys, to keep an eye on heading into race number 1. As we close out this first episode of NASMARB Garage Pass, we want to remind you that qualifying is going to be tomorrow night at 7 Eastern Time, and the race will be the following day, Friday at 7 Eastern. Make sure to tune in to the Spiral 360 at Spiral Speedway. But until next time, thank you, Sham. Thank you, Luke, for joining me here on the podcast, and we hope you enjoy the first race of NASMARB Season 2.